Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. I added a few more sort of helpful features or helpful functions for working in MercedUI. I was just thinking about sort of when I've worked in different frameworks, what were things that were useful. So one thing that was always useful that I had to kind of figure out sometimes is kind of like, how do I get the queries in the URL? So in something like React, you could use like Next.js, which allows you to do stuff server side, and they would have abstractions in the request for you to grab the query URL. In native React, you would just have to kind of go out and parse the URL yourself. And I think that's how pretty much it worked for most times when you're working strictly in the front end. So I figured, you know what would be like make life easier? To have a function that will just parse the query and the hash from the URL if it exists for you. So I made that. Okay, it's called getQueryHash. You literally just run the function and it grabs it for you. So let me just show you that real quick. So let's go to our app.js and let's console.log. Console.log get query hash. We invoke that. Save. Okay, I'm gonna comment this. I will come back to that. Save. Let's go back to over here. So right now I have two queries. So hello with a 0 equals hello, and foo equals bar, and cheese equals YOLO. Now if I refresh, see I get this object, and the first element in the array is hello. So these are all the query items. Nice. So I don't have to sit there and worry about all the steps to parse that URL. But what if the URL had a hash at the end? So let's say we decided to add the hash cheese, okay, at the end of the URL. Now if I go to that, okay, let's hit enter again. There we go. Now if I look at the items, see the first element, the first one is still an object with all my queries, but then there's a second property or a second element in the array that has the hash value. So it grabs both. Okay, and that's cool. Okay, and let's understand that you can only have one hash in a URL, but as many queries as you want, so that should pretty much work regardless. Okay, neat. And then like the proper way of using it, like let's say you would be to do this, be like const destructure it. So const queries, so you store your queries in this queries variable, and then you store the hash in this hash variable, and then just do get query hash. And now I have those two variables accessible to me. So I can go queries and hash. That's two separate variables. Save. Okay, so here we have the object with the queries, and then we have our one variable with the hash. And this is useful because now you can easily just grab this stuff in your builder functions, in your component templates. You can just grab the get query hash, or you can use get query to get those pieces of information you may need for your templates, or if your particular thing works based on. Now the only downside to using this, okay, because for example if you use this in your templates, then you kind of have to have access to the library. So but if you're using this, you're using the library, so you know it's useful if you want to use it. Okay, and it wasn't a hard function to make, but it can be a hard function to think through when you're building it manually, so to have it ready to go is nice. Okay, so that's the first little helpful function. So that way you can make more use of queries and whatnot from the front end in a much easier way. So you can have like users put in a query for what they want the background color to be. You can grab it, feed it into your template. So essentially your builder function might go out and use this get query function, grab the query, then feed it into the template, and then yeah, that would be really cool. Okay, I mean, again, you'd have to make sure that the query is always in the URL and all that stuff, but again, these are things that are up to you to think through for your particular application. Cool. The second thing I added is I added like a little abstraction over the fetch API. You could just use fetch to do all your API calls, and that's fine. A lot of people like to use Axios because Axios kind of takes out that second step, because usually when you do, so we'll just take a look at this real quick. Usually when you do like fetch, you're gonna have to, go fetch, and then after that you're gonna get back a string, and then you have to turn that string into an JSON object, and then you get the JSON object. So one of the nice things about Axios, it just takes out that second step. But then you have to go load in a separate library. So I figured to save that and give that nice simplification for you, I created this function here, MUIRequest. So MercedUI, it's a requester. I was contemplating adding some more features to it, where basically like it returns you a function to refetch. But the more I thought about it, the more it seemed simpler just to keep it simple. So you just pass in the URL, just like it just literally works like fetch. You put in the URL, you pass in your object with all your settings, like what kind of type of request, what the body is, headers, whatever. Because literally all it is, it's just automating that middle piece of the request for you. So in that case, it would just work like using fetch or Axios. You just do the request. So here I do the request, and then you can chain off of it with a .then, with whatever you want to happen with the data that comes back. Neat. So in this case, we're just console logging the response from JSON placeholder. So I hit save. I go back to here, and there it is. You just get back the request. And again, you would just pass in that secondary. If you wanted to make like a post request or something like that, you would just pass in that second parameter with all those kind of settings like method, post, etc. You guys, if you've used fetch, you've run API calls before, you pretty much know how this works. If you haven't, then this is probably not particularly interesting to you. Okay. Although if you haven't been making API requests in the past and using fetch and Axios, you probably haven't done super crazy applications yet. Unless you've done them full stack with the backend already kind of attached. But even then, it's still hard to do a lot of things without making frequent asynchronous requests. Anything that has like a high level of sort of data manipulation. So those two things I've added. So again, MUIRequest and getQueryHash. This I think is particularly useful. This is just a slight convenience. It's just to kind of save you the trouble of having to go load in Axios as a secondary library. But otherwise, yeah, I'm starting to run out of ideas of things to add here. I think you kind of pretty much have everything you need to create UI, have some abstractions over the web component API that's native to the browser to make it easier to use standard web components in building your front end, but also a lot of other cool tools and functions that help, have dynamically render templates and move templates and route templates and do all sorts of fun stuff, to grab object properties with the getProps function. So that way you kind of have all those front-end framework type features and feel, but in a smaller library that makes a much heavier use of sort of what's in JavaScript now. So let's see, I think at this point, what's the library at? Library's at, now we're at 300 lines of code. Okay, we're at 300 lines of code. Let's see here. Let's commit this. Git add git commit. Well, before I commit it, I don't think I've added MUI the MUIRequest to the doc, so I'll add it. But like last time I submitted it, the package was 4.6 kilobytes. It's starting to get a little bit bigger. Let's just go take a look at the inside here. File, see how big this file is getting at this point. It's still only 7.4 kilobytes. Not bad. Okay, 7.4 kilobytes. The 22 kilobytes is really for all these other files. But literally, if you use a CDN, you're just loading in this file. At 7.4 kilobytes, you get all these features that'll make it really easy to do your UI, and it's not a bad deal. Okay, so have a great day and enjoy. I'll see you guys later on.